Two physical characters, both of them dealing decent amount of AoE damage. Who offers better investment for your account if you are choosing between both of them? Yunli, the new physical destruction character in Honkai Star Rail. Now, some of you who maybe didn't watch the live stream or didn't see her kit at all, Yunli, let me just give you a quick summary because we need a little bit of background knowledge to progress in this video. Yunli is basically, just think of it like Clara. She's basically like a 5-star limited Clara. With a bit of nuances, we'll get into that as we go along. She counters enemy. When she uses her ult, she has an enhanced counter mode. And she also has a self-sustain mechanic where she uses a skill, she heals a portion of her HP, which is very useful because it increases the amount of team compositions she can fulfill. And everyone likes Fire MC's taunt, and they're bringing it back. She also has a taunt inbuilt in her, which is kind of like a guarantee aggro draw if you hit it. That is Yunli's overall kit. That's all you pretty much need to know to progress in this video. And I always like to first start things off comparing these two characters in terms of current value, because if you are pulling for investment value, you're spending your premium currency, you want to know exactly what you get out of these two characters right now and if it's meant for you, or is it better like pulling them in a rerun if they don't even have the comms available for them. You might as well just save your pulls, get someone else that's more urgent later on. So that is something that I want to talk about. And with all of these like investment videos, I always will be very logical, unbiased for the entirety of this video, except all the way at the end, where I'll share with you my own personal thoughts between both of them. If you care about any of that, just stay to the end to find out. So first things first, current value. One is a destruction character, one is an erudition character. Both of them are physical, so they compete quite nicely in terms of the same requirement for a lot of players. But the main difference that you would see in terms of what they do other than their kit is the team compositions they fulfill. So green here is Yunli, red here is Argenti, and yellow I just put them for both. So any character in the game kind of can be ran for hyper carry as long as they are doing DPS in nature. So disregard this like yellow box here a little bit more. I want to focus on the two boxes that they each individually fill. As you can see, they don't compete with each other as closely as one might think, even though they are both physical. Argenti fulfills more of a niche of fighting in team compositions that require you to hit a lot, move very fast, because he has one of the lowest burst cost energies in the game, like 90 burst cost with his half burst, and he gets a lot of energy restoration. So he hits very often for if you need to like proc breaking or something like that. He doesn't scale off break, that's why he doesn't fulfill here, but he hits very, very often. Any buff in the Memory of Chaos and etc. that relies on enemies getting hit a lot, Argenti fulfills that order very well. Now on the flip side of things, totally flip side, Yunli doesn't scale off with her own speed, she actually scales off with the enemy's speed. So fast and often on the enemy side now, and follow-up attacking, traditionally we have always been thinking about Dr. Ratio, about Topaz and Nambi, Aventurine, Robin, these kind of characters who kind of scale off with their own speed or the speed of the team. Whereas Yunli is in a special category similar to the likes of characters like Clara, as well as the likes of characters like March 7, who rely on the enemies to move faster so that they can do more damage. March 7 to a certain extent, base March 7 at least, because she has a number of stacks before it wears off. Clara and Yunli are more similar in this aspect. So they are both follow-up type attackers, but they rely on the enemy to move faster. In other gacha games, is considered as anti-cleave, which means if the enemy has a very, very fast-moving enemy, very high amounts of damage, anti-cleave means you prevent the enemy from hitting you too hard, too fast by landing a nice counter to dish their damage back to them, allowing you to build very thick and chunky comms which allow you to survive a lot more damage much better as well. So current value, these two characters, we talk about the team compositions they fill. In my opinion, if you are looking for a character to push through pure fiction, maybe you do not have a character like Himiko, maybe you do not have a character, for example, like Hertha, well built, maybe you just don't like her playstyle or stuff like that. Argenti actually fulfills this niche quite well in the physical camp. Not many physical characters in the game offer the same amount of erudition, like AoE, fast mobility that he does. He acts so fast. So pure fiction game mode, I think for Argenti. If you are currently like in a later game mode where you're looking to build out your team compositions and maybe you like Clara's playstyle, you like the counter aspect and you want a bit more a character that is able to have a bit more damage, a bit more utility, Yunli is definitely going to fill that camp And I think it's very, very interesting for novelty, at least, to try a totally new playstyle. Her playstyle and Clara's playstyle, both of them, are very different from any other playstyle you will play in the game. So if you're getting bored of the current meta and stuff, you might feel it a little bit more refreshing to go on the likes of Yunli, who offer you a very, very different playstyle where you counter the enemies instead. Some team compositions, variety that you can do as well. She can be built as a pseudo tank. She can be built as a DPS. You can build her as an aggro draw sustain. Many ways, because there are many destruction light cones in the game that allow you to, like, if you take damage, you heal, you dish damage, and blah blah blah. Her signature maybe even has like significant aggro draw to her. So many different comps that you can fulfill with a character like Yunli. We'll touch about that more in the team compositions video that we do on this channel, where we talk about both of their Yunli's team compositions. If you want me to call a current value who is actually better, I think that Yunli offers a lot more value currently in the game, especially if you're a player who is relatively later game. Newer players can also benefit a lot from Yunli because she becomes like an anchor in your team. A lot of people have used Clara in the early to mid game of their Honkai Star Rail journey and found her very effective. I think Yunli is going to be very good for if you're a new player joining the game. Offers you tons of value with your team compositions. Might not be best in Pure Fiction, but you have Herta, so eventually you will be able to push through Pure Fiction game mode. I think Yunli offers tons of more current value compared to Argenti, who, even though is a specialist in his niche, might have alternatives away around him, especially if the floor is not weak to physical in that particular rotation. So let's not talk about potential first. Let's talk about alternatives. So alternatives falls in the similar category of current value, but who else does their job? Because if there's already other like shoes out there and you already have like one shoe, why do you want to buy more shoes? I don't know. I'm just speaking metaphorically here. I know some people have a lot of shoes. But first things first, alternatives for Yunli. There's only pretty much one, Clara and Yunli. So the differences between Clara and Yunli are actually quite significant, even though they are both counter in nature. Clara, when your teammates are hit, she counters. Whereas Yunli, if your teammates are hit, she doesn't counter. Yunli has guaranteed aggro draw. Clara does not. Yunli is focused, has an enhanced mode and doesn't have an enhanced mode, and she can counter in both of them, which I think is very, very strong. Yunli has a self-sustain mechanic and damage reduction. Clara has damage reduction. So I think overall in terms of utility, Yunli offers a lot more variety in team compositions, especially if you are playing with shielder type units. For example, if they break through your shield and you're worried that she might die, she at least has some self-sustain to get around that aspect, so you don't have to forcefully run a sustain healer like, for example, Lynx and etc. So these are, in my opinion, like the real alternatives for Yunli. Some minor alternatives are like March 7, base March 7, who offers you a certain set amount of counter chances if the enemy attacks, like 2 or 3. Then again, March 7 could be played together with Yunli as well, similar to March 7 and Clara. So very, very synergistic in that. So not really a true competitor, I would say. That's why I would refrain from putting it here. Other than that, I think alternatives for the left side here are few and far between. No one really plays into that kind of follow-up attacks. Maybe if you're talking about follow-up attacking buffing, if let's say the buff of the flavor of the month is follow attacks, you could go by the other route, going, for example, a Doctor Ratio, Topaz and Nambi kind of follow attacking route instead of going for Yunli follow attacking counter kind of follow attack route. Argenti, on the other hand, he actually has very, very few alternatives. If you are playing him outside of Pure Fiction, the best alternative and competitor to him is probably Boot Heal. If you don't care about his AoE damage and you're just focusing on the amount of physical break he can do. Boot Heal is way better at destroying enemies' physical weakness compared to a character like Argenti, but Boot Heal lacks the presence in a game mode, for example, like Pure Fiction. So Pure Fiction aside, just a huge caveat, Shu Sang is also decent, does very, very good amounts of physical damage, very fast, hits very often, but again, these two units are very single target in nature. To some extent, Yunli is also an alternative to Argenti himself, because she also deals AoE damage, same as Clara, but the problem is, none of these characters perform in Pure Fiction, because Pure Fiction is you hitting the enemy as quickly as you can, clearing as much as you can. You pretty much only have 4 turns, 5 turns, depending on how fast you want to clear, to get the enemies all wiped out. And if you rely on the enemy's speed, it's very, very uncertain, unpredictable, which is why I think Yunli and Clara generally underperforms Argenti in Pure Fiction game mode. But that aside, if you're talking about the broader roster of Erudition characters, there is so much competition for Argenti, and unless, for example, some characters are just weak to physical and maybe imaginary or something like that, a rarer element at least that we currently do not have. Himiko, Herta, these characters, and even Serval, which is a free character, these characters offer you a lot of fast attacking for their elemental type, which already covers a lot of ground that we have. And that's why I think that in terms of alternatives, I'll give the win actually to Yunli, who has a lot fewer alternatives and even performs well with some of her so-called quote-unquote alternatives. So second win goes to Yunli. But that's not the only categories that we want to talk about. I don't just want to talk about current value of things. I want to talk about the future value of characters as well, because this is important to know. If they are going to be way better in future and they currently are not that great, means it's much better to just wait for their rerun, pull them in their rerun. Of course, here I just want to give you a huge caveat. This is Argenti's first rerun already, and if you don't pick him up now, probably you will never have a chance to pick him up again. So if Yunli is better in the future, for some of you Argenti lovers, maybe you can consider picking up Argenti first and then pull Yunli in a rerun if you do need her in future as well. So future value. I think that right now in the game, Hoyoverse hasn't paid too much attention to counter mechanics yet. There are not clear indications that they want to go down the counter road. They have only released Clara in the game way at the start of 1.0, so there's like almost a year and a half at this point already, where they touch on the counter team competitions. Yunli is their first re-entry into this part, which could signal that they are trying to shift the game into perhaps a counter mechanic, which I think is going to be very interesting because there are very, very few choices here. Similarly to the early days of shifting meta of break effect, like when Runmei first came about, when Boot Hill first came about, Harmony MC, at first it didn't seem too beneficial to play these characters, but slowly as we tend to it, more of these characters going into the angle, it could be a very interesting point. And Yunli is released in a very interesting time. I'll talk about that in a bit, but overall I think that she does have a lot of value when being played into a counter mechanic team. We do not have a lot of supports that back up this team composition yet. Could see a lot more interest in this aspect moving forward. Unfortunately, she does pair the same element as like Clara, which is something that I dislike. I would have much rather like she played like fire counter or imaginary counter, quantum counter, but it is what it is. So I think future value for Yunli does look more interesting. She doesn't have any known increase right now as of time of recording, no new gear, no new something, but it's upsides that could be. On the other hand, Argenti arguably is at his best. I don't think that they will intend to make him any stronger right now. Erudition characters in general are quite stable, flatline in a sense, unless you're like Jingyuan, who has received buffs from the very beginning all the way to now, subtle buffs at least. Argenti is going to be reliable workhorse in the pure fiction game mode if you're looking to target physical weaknesses, and that is pretty much it. He's going to face more competition in future, so if we are talking about power creep, which is the essence of future value, whether they work better or they are worse, I think that Argenti faces more power creep potential than character like Yunli, who is currently very niche in her field, yet also very versatile in her kit. So I think I'll give future value to Yunli as well. Just feels a lot better in terms of positioning when more characters come in the game. It makes sense for Hoyoverse to want to bump up the counter things, to just start to sell more ways of playing the game to make more money. And this is where I want to couple in with potential category. Now, potential category, instead of looking at the game state, looks at the content, the developer themselves, which is Hoyoverse, and what they tend to do based on our experience of the past like 4 to 5 years of covering their specific games. So what Hoyoverse always likes to do is they always have one particular unit that is going to carry the sales for at least a little bit. These are notable characters. For example, you have characters like Akirion, characters like Jingliu. These are units that are anchor characters that sell, and player resources might be slightly high, so it's meant to drain some resources out, introduce a new playstyle and stuff like that. These are all anchor characters. I would consider like even Runmei to also be one of the anchor characters that you are basically forcing players to like spend as much as they can, or they are pivotal characters that are moving into another playstyle. I noticed they like to do that, and I think Yunli is one of those characters as well. If you notice in the past 2 patches, we didn't have super high profile characters. We had Jade, who is not as high profile as some of the previous characters in the game that were like way more prestigious characters. Firefly was also like one of the anchor characters in the game. So I think that releasing with a gap of like Jade in between makes Yunli possibly an entrance into an entirely new playstyle, which we might see more of moving forward. For example, in Hoyoverse plans. first time they are entering into this space, I think this will give you a lot of early mover advantage if you're planning to play in the playstyle. For me personally, I don't even have Clara, so this is definitely a must pull for me because I want to get into the space of counter if they do play into it. Generally speaking, we are also entering the Siento arc, which is the next 3 to 4 weeks, or 3 to 4 months rather. We're going to be seeing a lot of new Siento characters, and this gives them more incentive to push out characters that synergize with their existing cast rather than like synergizing with other characters on the current roster that we have. So at least they play together, form new teams, they can sell you the 3 months worth of characters, makes it more fun, more interesting from their perspective as well. Whereas Argenti is more focused on Knights of Beauty kind of playline. He doesn't really have a character that super loves him, super buffs him, hyper carry him and stuff. So that could be one potential in future, way when we have like a Knights of Beauty way long in future. But considering that this is already his first rerun and they are not doing anything to bump up his sales, likely he's not going to be super relevant in terms of the potential aspect. I don't think they're going to invest a lot of media, a lot of resources into him just yet. Maybe in future when we have a Knights of Beauty planet, could see a resurgence, but for the near term to the mid term, I don't think Argenti is going to be worth it here. Maybe pull him on his second rerun, wherever that is. No character still has a second rerun. And the last logical category before we go into my personal thoughts that I want to share is the free-to-play kit. Between both of these two characters, I would say Yunli is much more free-to-play friendly compared to Argenti, just because of she has a lot of free-to-play options. Even the Herta shop light cone is already pretty decent for her. It worked decently for a character like Clara. It works decently for her as well. You can use Clara's light cone on her if you luckily manage to pull it. And other free-to-play options definitely do exist also. Pretty much the Herta shop light cone likely is going to be one of her better ones. But we'll talk more once her full kit is out in our build guide video you will see on the channel. You will be quite interested. I think overall Yunli is the better one of the two. Argenti is still a character that wants to do some damage in terms of crit rate, crit damage, break effect, or whatever thing he scales off with some speed. So his resource requirement is definitely a lot higher. Whereas for Yunli, she doesn't really care too much about speed. So resource allocation for your overall account wise, your speed gear can go to the characters that need it. Whereas your Yunli is here can just go for pure damage, pure crit, some chunkiness in her overall kit, and she'll be really much better off. So account-wide progress, way more efficient to build a character like Yunli, especially since the free-to-play Herta shop light cone, you probably unslapping it for a DPS, for example like Firefly or a DPS like Jingliu. Maybe you have other better options already. But those are some of the comparisons between both of them. I think the winner in all of these categories has to be Yunli in terms of the logical decision making. And to back that up, my thought process of these two characters is very in line with the logic that we have laid out. I think that Yunli is a tremendously strong character. I'm very excited for this character, and the last time I was super excited for this character, a character like this probably was like Akirion and Fucc, that kind of era, and Runmei. I think she's going to introduce a very interesting playstyle. Does signal a change in the times. Current meta might shift, but we need more information on that moving forward. But clearly, I think this is a number one top pick for me. I don't have Clara, so it's even more important for me personally as a content creator. Argenti here, I do see his value. I do have him as well, but I hardly play him. Even though I have him, I have most characters in the game, and I don't see a niche that he really outperforms in significantly other than being physical, pure fiction. You can't get by without him, and that's my honest opinion. And if you appreciate such honest content on this channel, do like and subscribe. We do this for most permutations and combinations of characters that you see. If you're interested in Yunli as well, we have team composition videos that will come up on the channel, and more comparisons with other characters, like the new characters that have been released. We'll talk about them in our subsequent video. If you are interested in Argenti, we do have quite a lot of videos on him already. You can check it out as well. And again, thank you again so much for your attention watching till this point, and see you in the next video.